Good evening, I'm Robbie Alampay. The big stories tonight. Video of the Jolo shooting aftermath surfaces. The footage raises questions as to how the crime scene was preserved. Rescuers might have to search deeper for the 14 missing on board Liberty 5. The passengers are feared to have gone down with parts of their boat 2,000 meters below sea level. Despite having more testing laboratories, the health department admits testing and validation backlogs persist. An expert calls for an upgrade in data reporting infrastructure. Jeepneys will finally get to ferry passengers once again. That's starting Friday, but the MRT will cut down its operations as more than 100 workers test positive for COVID-19. And Meralco is giving consumers until September to settle quarantine bills, but some lawmakers argue, regardless of the extension, consumers will not have the money to pay. Let's start with video showing things that transpired after the shooting incident in Jolo as a significant development in the case. But this evidence is also raising questions as to how things were handled by both the police and the armed forces. Patricia Mangune with the story.
In this CCTV footage, 4 lifeless bodies are seen sprawled on the street. They are the intelligence operatives of the Philippine Army who were shot dead in Jolo Sulu on Monday. Men in uniform and civilian clothes are seen walking around the remains. One even lifted the head of one of the victims, opened the SUV's door at the driver's side twice, and scanned the vehicle. Former AFP Chief of Staff retired General Ricardo Visaya posted the video. The Philippine Army has verified that the men in the video were soldiers who rushed to the scene in the hopes of rescuing anyone alive and recover personal belongings.
Kasi naka-receive nga sila ng call from one of our witnesses, yung isa naming operative na nakakita ng shooting. Tingnan nila yung mga identities ng nandun sa nandun sa area. Chinek nila yung pulse kung may buhay and secure the vehicle, no?
The soldier who opened the car door was identified as the older brother of one of the slain operatives, Corporal Abdal Asula, who drove the vehicle before his demise. The Philippine Army admitted their lapses.
Well, the lapses really is yung pagbukas ng pinto, pagkuha ng personal things ni Corporal Asula. First thing that came into his mind is to secure his things and make a makeshift pillow at i-secure yung ulo ng kapatid niya.
It was apparent also in the video that the crime scene was not immediately cordoned off with a police line, and there was no police present at the time. When the PNP SOCO and Sulu Provincial Director Colonel Michael Bawayan arrived, they were able to get permission to retrieve the intelligence equipment.
May pananagutan ang Jolo Municipal Police dito dahil base sa ating mga standard operating procedures, kapag may insidente at may naganap na shooting o kaya pagpatay, kailangan ma-preserve agad.
Aside from the 9 cops involved in the shooting, Jolo Municipal Chief of Police, Lieutenant Colonel Walter Anayo, was also relieved from his post. Meanwhile, families of the killed soldiers are still grieving the death of their loved ones.
Kung maintindihan, bakit kabaro pa? Sana kahit justice man lang. Yun na lang po talaga.
Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana chose to withhold judgment until the investigation of the NBI is concluded. He paid his respects to the families at the mortuary of the Libingan ng mga Bayani. Lorenzana also called on both the police and the military in Jolo to not let the tensions escalate.
Advise our leaders, yung mga military leaders natin, to control their people. Anyway, meron namang investigasyon eh. Talabas naman yung totoo.
The NBI has finished its forensic examination on the slain soldiers. The results showed that the victims sustained several gunshot wounds.
One has 8 gunshot wounds. That much, yes. Yung iba, I think one has 3.
The NBI says it will issue a subpoena to the police involved in the incident. For News 5, Patricia Mangune. We are One News.
PNP Chief Archie Gamboa assures that the relationship between the military and the police will be unaffected by the Jolo incident. Gamboa says the relationship is founded on a long shared history of cooperation and brotherhood, and that the two units are fighting the same enemy. Army spokesperson Demi Zagala echoes Gamboa's statement, saying that the PNP is their partner in maintaining peace and security.
We must not judge the whole PNP organization, and that with this change of mode of killing, or how our soldiers were killed, from misencounter to killing, we're headed towards a positive direction of coming together to find out the truth.
Senator Risa Ontiveros is asking for a Senate investigation on the matter. Ontiveros says the shooting feeds the public's distrust towards the PNP. More than 219 new COVID-19 cases were reported today, the lowest number of new cases for almost a month now. Only around 50 are fresh cases, while over 240 were reported late. There are now more than 38,800 COVID-19 cases in the Philippines. 4 new deaths were recorded today, pushing the death toll to more than 1,270. Total recoveries now stand at more than 10,670, with 235 new recoveries over the past 24 hours. The Department of Health says it is not deliberately misreporting COVID-related data, as some allege, that cases have already breached 40,000. The agency admits, however, that backlogs in testing persist. Marian Enriquez has this report.
Today's the last day na pala. Ano bang sinasabi ko? Wala na po. Panalo na tayo. We beat the UP prediction po. We beat it. So congratulations, Philippines. Let's do it again in July.
Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque drew flak for congratulating the Philippines for beating predictions by UP Diliman researchers that the country would have 40,000 COVID-19 cases by end June. Notably, the Health Department's own data reflected that as early as June 28, there are already 46,000 positive cases in the country. But in a June 30 briefing, the DOH only reported over 37,500 confirmed cases. Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergeire explained all positive results have to undergo a validation process to avoid duplication. Only then they will be counted as confirmed cases.
Tinitignan natin if there were duplicates. Pangalawa, kung may error sa mga pangalan. Pangatlo, kung natag na siya sa ibang laboratorio. Pangapat, kung pang ilang test na ito, baka mamaya repeat test na pala ito ng mga ibang tao. And then panglima, nakakakita rin kami with this line list of the lab na binibigay sa amin ng ibang hindi pa rin natatag dito sa Epidemiology Bureau.
And despite having 65 testing laboratories, the DOH admitted that testing and validation backlogs persist. And while it takes time to confirm cases, Vergeire said the government is not deliberately misreporting. Benjamin Vallejo, a science policy advisor from UP Diliman, noted that from the get-go, the country is not 100% prepared for this pandemic, especially when it comes to data reporting.
Wala pa tayong capacity for real time unlike sa Germany or in China. Okay? Dahil isa rin naman alam niyo naman ang ating infrastructure for data reporting, okay? For example, sa China, hospitals are able to report it immediately to their health ministry, no?
He stressed the need for more molecular laboratories in the country.
Na-overwhelm tayo kasi ang mga facilities natin for molecular medical diagnostics at before COVID-19 are mainly for research. Nagra-ramp up tayo ng testing, kaya lang medyo mahirapan mag-catch up yung ating processing and analysis of the sample side.
Over in Cebu, the DOH noted that hospitals have reached more than 80% critical level occupancy in terms of isolation beds and intensive care units. Vergeire explained this might be due to a lack in tertiary level hospitals. She pointed out that in Chonghua Hospital, 188 of its 190 COVID-dedicated beds are already occupied, while 19 of its 120 ICU beds are being used. Chonghua Hospital also has 238 personnel in quarantine. But outside Cebu, Vergeire said the rest of the country is doing better, with just about 38% occupancy of ICU beds nationwide. For News 5, Marian Enriquez, we are One News.
The Health Department is pushing for the passage of a new Bayanihan law. DOH spokesperson Maria Rosario Vergeire says they need the law to disburse financial aid to healthcare workers, especially those who have contracted the virus. The DOH says funding from the SSS and the GSIS to help healthcare workers may not be enough.
Kami, meron naman tayong intention talaga na ituloy natin ito. Kaya lang, hindi tayo makakapagtuloy hanggang walang basis of law. Because maglalabas tayo ng pera from the coffers of the national government and we need a sound basis for that whenever we do that.
Palace spokesman Harry Roque says the Bayanihan 2 bill will likely be passed before President Duterte's next State of the Nation address. Roque says the draft of the bill has been forwarded to Executive Secretary Salvador Medaldea for final review. The executive branch may soon be calling for a special session in order for Congress to pass the measure. At least 140 billion pesos will be part of the stimulus package. We'll pause for a short break, but when the big story returns, the Coast Guard might have to tap our Asian neighbors to be able to go as deep as 2,000 meters, all in hopes of finding Liberty 5's missing 14. And more than 6,000 jeepney drivers will finally get their livelihood back by this weekend. More are expected to ply the roads in the coming weeks as the Metro's public transportation slowly resumes. I'm Robbie Alampay. You're watching The Big Story. The 14 missing crew members and passengers of the Liberty 5 fishing vessel may have been trapped under the capsized boat. This after not one of the missing Filipinos have turned up after 4 days of search and rescue operations. Coast Guard spokesperson Armand Balilo says in a radio interview that should this be the case, the missing might have sunk with the boat 2,000 meters below sea level. The Coast Guard has been searching only up to 100 meters underwater. Commandant Vice Admiral George Ursabia wants to continue the search. The PCG will seek assistance from neighboring countries that have the machinery and equipment to reach deeper into the sea. The controversial anti-terror bill is inching closer towards presidential approval. Malacanang spokesman Harry Roque says the copy approved by both chambers of Congress is now up for final review by Executive Secretary Salvador Medaldea.
Ibig sabihin po, meron na pong memorandum na recommending a course of action to the President. Subject to final approval lang po siguro yan ni Executive Secretary at dadalhin na po sa lamesa ni Presidente.
The Makabayan bloc in the House of Representatives is appealing to the President to veto the proposed measure, citing possible rights violations. The bill is set to lapse into law on July 9, repealing the Human Security Act of 2007.
It will have a chilling effect, no, sa ating mga kababayan and magreresulta ng napakaraming rights violations. So hangga't hindi po dapat ito, hindi po dapat ito ipatupad at ang panawagan natin ay veto terror bill.
And these are the other big stories today. Aside from not being able to attend special development and rehab centers, advocacy groups Save the Children says that during the lockdown, about 25% of children with disabilities suffered verbal and emotional abuse. There are 10 bills pending in the Senate pushing to institutionalize inclusive learning for children with disabilities. Justice Secretary Minardo Guevara is appealing to the public to give the interagency panel reviewing the government's drug war a chance. This comes after criticism that its creation was just the government's way to avoid international scrutiny. Human Rights Watch on Wednesday said the panel is just an attempt to discourage the UN Human Rights Council from conducting its own probe. And the Interior Department says more than 15,000 detainees have been released from facilities under the BJMP since community quarantine protocols were imposed. According to Undersecretary Jonathan Malaya, majority of them are elderly and those who committed light or bailable offenses. More than 6,000 traditional jeepneys have been given the green light to resume operations starting Friday. But the government has a few reminders to the drivers and the commuters. Gerard de la Peña has details.
Rodrigo's jeepney is not yet due for registration until next month. But he had to immediately sign up at the LTO after finding out that jeepneys will once again be allowed to ply his route along the Baclaran-Sucat stretch.
Kahit ilang pasahero lang, pagtataga namin. Wala lang na pakain sa pamilya eh.
The LTFRB has opened up 49 routes where 6,002 jeepneys will operate starting Friday, July 3. Operators don't have to secure special permits as long as they are registered with the LTO and their vehicles are deemed roadworthy. That means wheels are aligned, emission is clean, and brakes and lights are all working. According to the guidelines, they just have to download a QR code from the LTFRB's website. But since it is still up for maintenance, the agency decided to just publish on its Facebook page the names of allowed operators. Those who don't have QR codes will not be apprehended until Sunday.
Pagbukas po natin ng mga PUJ routes, supposedly kailangan natin ng special permit. But since these are existing routes, we also would need to know if the PUJ that are running on the road are the ones that are allowed to run on those routes.
Those not in the list were disappointed, especially those who invested at least 2,000 pesos just to prepare their jeepneys for the expected resumption of operations.
Sobrang nangihinayang po kami na ni isa man lang dun sa mga pinakita namin, pinaghirapan namin, hindi po kami napasama.
The Transportation Department said more routes will be opened in the coming days as they gradually resume public transportation in Metro Manila. As for the fare, authorities said there will be no changes in the matrix. They also reminded the commuting public to pay directly to the driver and avoid passing around money with fellow passengers to mitigate the spread of COVID-19. For News 5, Gerard de la Peña, we are One News.
MRT management says all its station personnel remain free of COVID-19. This after more than 120 depot workers were found to have contracted the virus. Jenny Dongon with the story.
Starting Monday, MRT's operations will be adjusted. From 16 to 19 train sets each day, only 10 to 12 will be deployed starting next week. This as 124 workers of MRT3's maintenance service provider, Sumitomo MHI TESP, and 3 other railway personnel have tested positive for COVID-19. USEC TJ Batan clarifies that all who tested positive were assigned at the railway's depot and did not have any direct contact with station personnel and passengers.
Yun pong ating mga frontliners MRT3 ay hanggang ngayon po ay wala po tayong positive na COVID-19 sa kanila.
In turn, the Transportation Department will boost its bus augmentation program and EDSA busway service to compensate for the MRT's reduced capacity. Around 60 to 90 buses are on standby as additional fleet to the 150 buses that have been deployed for the interim operations of the EDSA busway this week.
Makakakita tayo next week na meron tayong ilang mga pasahero na dating sumasakay ng mga tren na lilipat dun sa dagdag nating mga bus.
Batan added that passengers should expect a short waiting interval time once more buses are in operation.
Ibinaba na natin yung fixed dispatching interval natin from 5 to 3 minutes. So mas makakaasa yung mga riders natin ng higher availability ng mga bus dito sa ating bus augmentation program.
Lorna, a freelance accountant who frequently rides the MRT, said that she will allot more time for her commute starting Monday.
Mag-a-adjust ako ng time para makasakay kasi mas convenient rito rather than the buses or the jeep.
MRT3 Director for Operations Mike Kapati said that the train schedule will not be affected by the reduction of trains. Kapati adds that the limited operation will depend on personal testing negative for the virus.
Mas marami po yung nagne-negative, ibig sabihin, everyday po pwedeng madagdagan yung mga personnel natin ng maintenance provider. Depende lang po yan sa resulta. At i-maintain lang po natin talaga yung mga negative personnel until such time magbalik tayo sa normal na kondisyon.
Kapati said that the management has yet to finalize the number of train sets that will operate on Monday. But before that, MRT3 will halt operations this weekend due to the rail replacement works. For News 5, Jenny Dongon, WR1 News.
Coming up on the big story, J&T Express employees involved in the reckless throwing of packages have been sanctioned. The company vows to cooperate with a government probe. And Meralco customers now have until September 30 to settle their bills during the quarantine period. The details when we return. This is the big story. I'm Robbie Alampay. Courier company J&T Express is in hot water after President Duterte threatened to shut them down over reports of mishandling of packages. The company vows to cooperate with any probe on the matter. Greg Gregorio with the details.
After receiving a damaged parcel, Tintin Togada can't help but be disappointed with the service of J&T Express Philippines.
Ano ngayon? Pandemic, kailangan ng pera. Tapos ganun pa yung gagawin.
Some netizens also posted lost or damaged parcels delivered by the courier service. J&T Express went viral recently after a video of its employees throwing packages recklessly surfaced online. That caught the attention of President Duterte, who ordered an investigation and threatened to shut down the firm.
I will close you down. Sigurado yan. Sasarahan talaga kita, whether you like it or not, after the CIDJ and the NBI would finish their investigation and would point a liability sa inyo.
J&T Express said that they have met with the officials from the Criminal Investigation and Detection Group on Wednesday.
The internal investigation that we conducted also involves questioning people who are on site. That involves the supervisors, the guard in the area, and of course revisiting the CCTV footage that is always up 24/7.
The company maintained that the incident was an isolated case and that they don't tolerate such behavior. It assured that these individuals have been sanctioned accordingly. Some were handed a memorandum while others were subjected to retraining.
There are varying degrees of sanctions that we implemented based on what we've seen in the video, since again there are many factors involved.
J&T Express assured that they have a system for the orderly processing of packages and that complaints are being dealt with accordingly. As for the president's order, J&T said it's all for the sake of protecting public interest and consumer rights. However, the company would like to remind their 15,000 employees to keep serving the public in accordance with the company's standards, as it is hard to lose a job amid the pandemic. For News 5, Greg Gregorio, we are One News.
Power distributor Meralco is extending its August due date by a month as bill shock complaints continue to stream in. Shaila Francisco with the story.
After a slew of consumer complaints, Meralco now gives customers until September 30 to settle their bills before receiving disconnection notices. But lawmakers and consumer groups argue, even with the extension, some Lifeline customers will still be unable to pay bills.
Kahit 12 months installment mo yan, kasi wala po silang kinita, baka naman pwedeng 1-month condonation sa consumption.
We are granting until September 30, but we are aware of the plight of our kababayans. We will be sensitive and we will take a look once we get closer to September 30.
Lawmakers are looking at tapping the unpaid 2.3 billion pesos that Meralco should have refunded to customers based on a 2003 Supreme Court order. Aside from the spike in electric bills, customers have also been complaining that payments were not credited and are still charged in subsequent bills. But Meralco explains customers may have paid after Meralco sent out the updated billing.
In no case will any payment that you have made be not reflected in your bill. It will be reflected in your credits and will be properly accounted for.
It's an online system that could already apply as a deduction kaagad doon sa pinaka-recent bill. Since it's already online, it's the fastest way of paying. So your customers are paying fast. Then we also require that yung actions nyo would be fast also.
Meralco says any overpayment and overcharging will be credited in subsequent billings. Meter reading costs not incurred during ECQ period for 11.5 million customers, amounting to 60 million pesos, will be refunded beginning July 15. Just this month, Meralco has also refunded 12.6 million pesos worth of convenience fee charged to customers during ECQ period. This amounts to 268,000 transactions. Meanwhile, amid the increasing complaints, Meralco answered queries of customers through its Meralco Power Up Live Forum. They now appeal for understanding from customers as traffic of concerns increased by 5 times, while calls doubled. The company has now increased the number of call center agents to address growing concern.
So I guess ang pakiusap is that in terms of other than patients, wag lang po paulit-ulit. Kung na-lodge na po natin yung ating concern,
Meralco says other factors may have also contributed to the surge in consumption, such as having dirty aircon filters. Setting the aircon thermostat to 16 to 18 degrees Celsius also increases consumption by a significant chunk compared to when it is set at 23 to 25 degrees. Shaila Francisco, WR1 News.
A lawmaker is calling on the NBI to look into broadcasting firm Amcara and its relationship with ABS-CBN. In a congressional hearing, House Deputy Majority Leader Boying Rimulya accused Amcara of being a dummy of ABS-CBN for airing the latter's programs using its frequency. Amcara Chairman Rodrigo Carandang said ABS-CBN has already divested its 49% stake in the channel. Carandang also explained that their block timing agreement is a common practice in the broadcast industry. Let's take a quick look at some of the world's big stories. The U.S. House of Representatives has approved a measure taking aim at China's new National Security Act. It seeks to penalize banks for doing business with Chinese officials who took part in crafting and implementing the security law. Tesla is now the world's highest valued automaker, surpassing former frontrunner Toyota Motors. This after its shares gained 5% in early morning trade to a record $1,133 per share. That boosts the company's market capital to more than $209 billion. And a Chinese company has jumped to the front of the race in finding a vaccine against COVID-19. The Chinese government has given the green light for the use of the experimental AD5-nCoV vaccine to its military for a period of 1 year. The vaccine, developed by CanSino Biologics, has showed significant potential in the first 2 phases of clinical trials. And that wraps up today's big story. Catch us again tomorrow, 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250. Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. You can also catch One News on the Signal Play app. Register for a free account now at signalplay.com and stream One News live anytime, anywhere. I'm Robbie Alampay and we are One News. Good evening.